Hi, welcome to week 10 of Have a Ball Writing Your First Novel. We are polishing our manuscripts to a high shine. That's your focus for the next 2 weeks. I will share with you a number of different processes that you can use to do that, many of which you've already been using. You're simply using it now on a more polished manuscript, and so you're buffing it. You're buffing it to a high shine when you polish silver or wood furniture or leather, or leather belt or coat or shoes. Initially, when you begin polishing and you put your liquid on it, your polish on it, it looks dull. And it's not until you continue to rub and buff that the shine begins to emerge, the most potent gleaming quality of the surface, whether it is leather, metal, or wood, shines through. And that is the metaphor for buffing, polishing your manuscript to a high shine. And I want to remind you of a couple of the ways that you'll continue to do this as you edit your chapters iteratively. And I also want to introduce you to two new processes for it. So the ones that we're going to review are the red marks. So you're going from something like this. This might be your first 4 or 5 edits of a chapter where, this is like chunk and plunk phase. So you're taking out big chunks, and you can see I'm moving them around. Then you can go to something like this. So you've gotten beyond chunk and plunk, and now you have linear sentences, and you're getting rid of some small graphs, but you're largely moving things around and you're making changes. So again, this looks a lot less red than that. And again, this is sort of a wholesale removal, whereas this is a more particulate editing. This is more particulate editing, and then you're doing a lot less removing in total and moving and shifting, and it's more working on little bits, little phrases, little words, punctuation, that kind of thing. So you're going from these kinds of edits, and the work is getting cleaner. That's one way to polish. Second way to polish is to read aloud. We discussed that in detail over the last 2 weeks, and I'm glad I introduced it 2 weeks ago rather than waiting to introduce it here, which was my original plan. Again, I want to share with you that's the metaphor for this whole process of, yeah, you have a plan, an outline, but within that you take side trips and you shift and you become aware of how changes can make the process more effective. It's the same thing in this video journey. It's the same thing in life, actually. So reading aloud, that's the second way to polish your manuscript to a high shine, to bring the best out of it, let the best that it has to present emerge. And the third way, this is something new that I haven't introduced. All writers have tics. Doesn't matter if you are a billionaire like J.K. Rowling, internationally recognized like Stephen King, mid-list like, I don't know, some other authors, or, novice. We all have tics. We have tics in our lives. My dear father, one of the loves of my life, Monroe Greenlee, may he rest in peace. It's the 10th anniversary of his death, 2014. my father's name is Monroe, and he had phrases, Monroeisms, and I'm sure many of us grew up with people in our lives, whether they were parents or siblings or grandparents, and they had all kinds of phrases that you knew grandpa or dad or sis would say, and those are loving, fun, memorable tics. We have tics in our body. People gesticulate in certain ways that are unique to them. Uh, some tics in writing, however, can be distracting, can distract from the reader enjoying your book to to the fullest. And so, one of the ways we find tics is through editing and reading aloud. A way that a friend just recently shared with me a month ago finds her tics is through using the search function in Word. I use a search function in Word, and I've used it to find my place in a manuscript, but she uses it to find tics, and I think that's fantastic, so I want to pass that along. She discovered through her iterative editing process that one of her tics was the transitional word but. When she went into her manuscript, that's about 250 pages long, I believe, she discovered that she used it 92 times. So not only did she discover that it was a heavy duty steroidal tic, she also knew exactly where it was. So that's a wonderful use of the search function in Word. My last manuscript, um, my word tic was still, and that was a transitional word, still. Still, she continued. Still, I use that a lot. I discovered it through reading aloud. You can really hear that. Still, still, your mind reads for meaning. Your ear will absolutely hear something that's flat. Now, for my 10th book, which is my first novel, I will most certainly add my friend's stellar suggestion for using the search function. So that's the third way you can polish your work to a high shine. Fourth is another resource I'm going to introduce to you, and it's called Synonym Finder. I've used mine so much and I've had it for so long that the front page is torn off. This is published by Rodale Press, and I used to use Roget's Thesaurus for many years. I grew up using Roget's. In the same way I grew up using Webster's, I still use Webster's, it's 11th collegiate dictionary. I grew up with Roget's Thesaurus. Again, these are things that my dear daddy introduced me to. Synonym Finder, Natalie Goldberg introduced me to when I first studied with her in Taos, New Mexico in the late 1990s, and this is off the chain. What I love about this is that it operates like a dictionary, so you don't have to go to that back thing and then look it up in the back and then look it up in the front, which is how Roget's works. And I like Roget's, and I'm not dissing Roget's, and it still has a place in my library, my reference library. This I find to be not only more user friendly, the usability of this is just exceptional because it literally is just like a dictionary. So if you know the alphabet, you just go in here and look it up. The other reason I like this is that it is so rich. If you find that your word tic is grow and you're like, I've used grow 15 times, I need a synonym for it, you go into GR and you look it up, and you will get listings this long, sometimes pages long, of incredibly fresh synonyms, and not just actual words, but phrases for grow or whatever word it is you're looking up, and it really freshens your work. I have introduced this to two writer friends, and one, in fact, the one who shared, my friend Jan, who shared her tip about using the search function to find her tics, actually called me and thanked me. She told me she didn't know how she had written books before this, and she said this one changed her life. So I highly recommend Synonym Finder. And unlike the Grammar Girl resource, which I suggest using online, again, I'm talking about user friendliness. I'm not trying to pitch one book over another or discourage you from buying any of these references. If I share a reference, it's obviously because I think it's worth sharing. What's important for me is the usability of it, the user interface of it. Even though that is a 21st century technology term, the usability, the user friendliness of something, whether it's a process in a supermarket or whether it's using a hard copy reference guide, to me is one of the reasons why I have a ball writing I'm having a ball writing my first novel, because I use references and resources that are easy to use. Not only, the credibility factor is already there. They've got the goods. All right. But how easily are they to use? So I don't think that made sense. But anyway, Synonym Finder. And that just amps the wattage on your work. It makes it a little fresh. You no matter how smart we are, we all have a limited vocabulary. That's why resources like this exist. I highly encourage you to use them. And the last way to put the polish on your writing is to, and this is really uh, a preview of next week, week 11, is to identify those friends of yours who are doyennes of detail, people who, when you were looking for readers during the first stage of writing your novel, and you wanted readers who whose strength it is to focus on the big picture, because you really wanted them to give you feedback on the plot and not on your sentence structure. You now want to think about those friends whose strength it is to focus on sentence structure. The friend who, when you have a very important letter that you need to write to some institution, you give your letter to that friend because you know they are really going to give you some detailed feedback. That's the friend now that you might consider asking to line edit your novel. That's all I'm going to say. Next week is line editing. We have a number of options. That is one. Hey, 2 more weeks, and I'll see you next week, week 11.